Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, and we are going to be not finishing completely, but doing some painting work, not on camera exactly, for our Estes Antar. Now, where we left off last, I had gone through all the finishing steps, and I have painted it. So this took a while. This always takes a while. It always takes way longer to finish the rocket than build it if you want it to look decent. And overall, I'm pretty pleased. So at this point, I put 2 layers of wood fill into the balsa here. I also put a layer, I think maybe 2 layers of this stuff, sanding sealer. And then I did a layer of spray paint primer, and in between each, I sanded it down. And then the final step prior to right now is that I put a gloss white finishing coat on the whole thing. Some of the rocket will remain gloss white, and so that part's done. The rest of it, though, we need to paint some other colors. So this will be our first, at least my first video showing how to add different colors to various parts of the rocket. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to consult the instructions. Typically, a nice option is to grab the box. Here's the box. The box is usually a nice big pretty picture showing the colors. Unfortunately, it usually doesn't show the whole rocket, and that's certainly the case in this one too. And also, the colors for this are kind of like, I don't know, sepia looking because it's a collector vintage signature series or whatever it's called. So this isn't super helpful either. I mean, some of it is, I guess, but I mean, like, I don't know what color that is. Is that a decal? Is that something I have to paint? I don't know. So, plan B. Consult the instructions. Read the manual. Sometimes Estes kits are not particularly specific about the coloration, and they sometimes only give you one face of the rocket. But this one is pretty detailed, which is good because we need that. So what do we have? Well, we need silver on the nose cone at the very tip. These stripe parts are all decals, so that's good. There's one down here too. Down at the very bottom in the like engine belt and things, so this part right here, this is supposed to be silver as well. That's going to be a royal pain to paint with spray paint, frankly, because it's so small and it's in among the fins. That's going to be tough. I might not do that just because. The nose cone, at this point, I'm going to detach, and I'm going to need to mask off most of the rocket. Now, I'm not going to put tape over the whole thing. Usually what I do is I get a piece of scratched computer paper and use that to cover it. But the interface between the paint part and the part I'm going to paint and the part that already is painted, I need to do something about that to keep it clear of the the new paint so I don't make a mess. Now, you have a bunch of options. Regular masking tape, not recommended by me anyway, because it is pretty thin, especially this stuff. This is not particularly nice masking tape. I keep it around for various things, but not for the name of the tape. I don't use it to mask because it doesn't do a particularly good job. So, not that. I have two other kinds here. These are both painting tape. This stuff I like, but I'm not going to use for this purpose. They sell this stuff in, so this is sharp lines, so it's pretty good, but this is ultra sharp lines. This stuff I'm going to use. Now, the major well, I'm going to use it for the rest of this. For the nose cone, I'm going to use the sharp lines. And here's the reason. So this stuff is fairly easy to work with. It tears like regular tape. And this roll is thinner, obviously, than this roll. Under normal circumstances, I would probably want to use the thick tape for this, but there are two reasons I'm not going to, at least on the nose cone. One is, if you look at the picture, there's going to be a decal that's covering up the interface between the silver tip and the white cone. That's going to give me some kind of insurance about how nice a job I do masking. Second of all, because we are taping on a rounded, a non-flat surface, this is not easy to do. Now, if I were taping off like this and I wanted to paint, I wanted to cover this end and paint this, it's not too bad to make a nice straight line if you are working if you're painting up the rounded cone. Because as I put this on, you'll notice that it bulges out this direction. That's fine. I can just crinkle that up and make sure I have a nice line going this way. The problem is I don't want to paint up. I want to paint the other direction, which means the crinkle, which is already forming here, is going to get in the way, and I'm not going to get a nice round surface going that way. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to tear the tape into a bunch of little pieces. That way I have kind of a minimal amount of, let's say, drift, whatever you want to call it. Basically, I'm making curves instead of a straight line. And I don't really want curves. I want a straight line. So the more little pieces of tape I use, the closer to a true straight line I'm going to get. So I'm just going to tear off as I go and not go more than like an inch maybe at any time. And it's not going to be perfect by any stretch of the imagination. So just to look here, it's curved in and there's a kind of a divot there. And there's a little bit of a gap here between the tape that I put down and the nose cone, so that's a problem too. The more little pieces I use, the less of a problem I'm going to have with making the arcs instead of straight lines. So truthfully, this isn't great as I've done it right here. But remember, I get to put a decal around the line that goes between the silver tip and the white paint. So it covers up a lot of my error. So that's part of why I'm using this. So that's probably good enough. I am going to get, I don't have it right now, but eventually, here's another set of instructions. I'm going to basically just wrap like this and tape both. I'm going to tape here to hold it in place to start with, and then once I wrap it around, and I'm not doing this for real, so it's not very good, but I'm going to then tape it again just to hold it, and I'm only spray painting this tip right here. So this is essentially, once I get my computer paper, this is ready to paint. The other part, well, looking at the instructions for the main body, let's actually hold it the other way. This is going to be tricky because I need to paint, some of this is going to stay white, maybe like one band's worth of the top part of the body here is going to stay white. Then there's a decal. Then the fuselage around the wings and a little bit past the wings is going to get painted silver. The fin is going to stay white. So I basically have to mask off every place I want to remain white. And on top of that, there's a third color I need to do, which is along here. And then the whole underside of the fin, it's supposed to be deep, it says this, deep forest, so a dark green on the inside. Yeah, so generally the better plan is to start at the white colors and work your way to dark. So, because the light colors generally don't cover the dark colors as well as the other way around. So the white is good. That's why I put the gloss coat of white on first. I'm going to use my very sharp. Now I probably don't need this again, at least for this side, because I've got a decal covering the interface, and I've got a decal down here covering the interface, but I'm going to do my best. This is bigger stuff anyway, working on a bigger part of the rocket, so no harm. Now this stuff is not like regular masking tape. It is plasticky. I can't tear it by hand, so I need to get my scissors to cut it. So snip. Now I'm going to, there aren't any dimensions on the drawing either, unfortunately, so I'm just going to have to eyeball it. Basically, I'm going to cover just one width of the tape around the end here. And why? Well, I don't have a particularly good reason. It just seems like an easy thing to do. I'm doing this off camera because it's kind of difficult to do. There we go. So I'm pulling the tape as taut as I can, and hopefully it will line up, and it did. If it doesn't line up the first time, then unpeel it and try it again. Now, The sharpness of the tape, the quality of your line, is dependent upon the material of the tape, right? So this is like totally impenetrable to paint. This not so good masking tape, I've had paint bleed through it. So that's part of it. But the other important thing is if we want a sharp line, we need to make sure that the adhesive in the tape has completely adhered to the rocket. So I'm pushing down right on that seam to make sure that it covers well. Okay. Now, the other thing we need to do is we need to put a bit of tape down here at the bottom. And it looks like the silver should stop right around the ends of the fin here. That's pretty inconvenient. That's going to be fairly difficult to mask off. So you know what I'm going to do? This is like, well, you certainly could do whatever you want, right? It's your model. You can build it however you want. You can paint it however you want. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the lower quality stuff here, and I'm going to make a ring around with this instead, just because this is closer to the width I want. Now, part of the problem with this is that I have the keel thing to this, and that's going to make it difficult to tape around. So I'm going to start here between the two fins that aren't the keel. So if I kind of connect them, just have the tape lying right at the edge of where the fin starts, it should give me a pretty good lead on going the rest of the way around. Now, I'm going to pay extra attention to make sure that I get the tape deep into this crack, because that's definitely a place where you could end up missing. So, and letting the paint bleed through. All right, I still don't like that. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to tear this off, and I'm going to put a second bit around the keel part. I do need to make sure that I've covered as much of this part as possible and in a straight line. So I'm going to turn it upside down and continue the line. There. That's pretty good. Having an extra layer of this tape, I've double layered it right in here, and that is not going to hurt anything. In fact, it's probably a good thing. Okay. Now, I need some more tape. Go through a decent amount of tape doing this usually. Get a smaller chunk, and I am going to do it like this. I didn't quite get the line right. My goal here is that I want this seam to be nice and tight so no paint sneaks underneath it. I've left a little bit of white in there. I can patch over that later, but I definitely want this to be as sharp as possible and to go as deep into the crack, there we go, around the fin as possible, so I don't have anything seeping in under here. That looks pretty good, and since I have this little crack and a little spare piece of tape, I'm going to cover that right up. I should be able to wrap computer paper around this to cover it up as well. So that's good so far. Now, the other question is, what do I want to do with the fin part in here that's supposed to remain white? Well, to be honest with you, I'm perfectly fine with it being silver instead of white, because it's my rocket. I get to choose how I want it painted. And it's going to be a whole lot easier for me to just paint this whole thing silver than to try to mask off right in through here and out the whole way on the rest of the fin to make sure that it doesn't get covered. I mean, I could. The main problem is the nice stuff that I have here won't fit in the gap. This stuff will, but there's still going to be a little bit of it. It's more trouble than it's worth. That's really the long and the short of it. And what's the difference between silver and white? I don't know. I mean, I do. I know what the color differences are, but I don't think it's material. So I'm gonna be perfectly happy painting the whole fin structure silver, basically. And the other thing too is so that this face of the rocket is going to get painted this deep forest green. So I don't have any problem painting silver. I'm not going to like purposefully try to paint the whole thing silver, but the dark green paint is going to cover whatever I happen to paint on here, no problem. Now, one last thing I need to mention too is that on the diagram, so the whole keel thing is going to be painted this deep forest as well. That's actually going to be fairly easy because I can put a huge long piece of nice thick tape right along this gap, front and back. Nice bit of paper on either side, and then just paint the fin. That will not be difficult. The hardest part about all this is going to be doing this little detail part in here. It also says that the outside, the white, the little streak is supposed to be white on the outside and deep green on the inside, but this is supposed to be white and this is supposed to be white. And that's just another thing. I'm probably not going to follow the instructions right there. It's more work than I want to do. You can definitely paint these or take these things off and do it slowly but surely over a prolonged period of time and do a nice job. I just don't see the value in it. It's going to look pretty nice one way or the other, and who's going to know? I mean, you are, I guess, because you watched this. The people who created the kit might know, but again, who cares? It's my model. It's something that I care about, and I care about a nice looking but not exactly right model more than I want to spend another 3 or 4 hours painting this carefully. So that's the thrill that is masking tape and painting. Honestly, I prefer the kits that have like two different colors, and that's kind of all you need to do. Frankly, I'm not a very good painter, um, so I find that part to be more frustrating than the rest of the entire build. And if it doesn't turn out just quite right, and I spent a little bit of time on it, I'd rather do that than spend a lot of time on it and have it not turn out quite right. So this is probably pretty good. Next steps for me then, I'm going to paint this off camera, obviously, and I will be back for the very final bits of the final construction assembly and putting decals on. So that should be fun. Probably won't be for a while though, because construction takes forever, finishing takes forever. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the final stage.